Just about 1 minute before the hour of 7 o'clock. Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. Now it's Monday, and on Mondays we have the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service joining us. And this morning we're going to be discussing the role of the public in law enforcement. With me, as always, is Inspector Michelle Lewis. Inspector, good morning.
Good morning, Kimberly, and it's always a pleasure to be here. Good morning to your listeners and viewers as well.
Happy to have you here as well. Now we're talking about the role of the public in law enforcement. Is this more than see something, say something?
It is, and so from time to time when we see things happen in the public, where persons are charged for different offences, we are obligated as the law enforcement agency in the country to share information that would help and prevent persons from being charged unnecessarily. And so persons think that if they have information, they can keep it to their chest and do not report it, not say something. But there are aspects of the law that mandates you to report it. So it's more than just if you see something, say something. You are obligated by law in certain cases, especially when it comes to children. So we see a lot of incidents with children in a bad light, with fights and that kind of thing. But sometimes what causes that kind of reaction is what is happening in the home. I'm not a social worker or a child psychologist, but if you speak to one of them, they will tell you that children react. And they react differently to instances and abuse that occur with them in various spheres, whether it's at a home or at school or somewhere else. And so, for example, where a child has been assaulted sexually, physically, or otherwise, they react. Where a child, for example, would have made a report or say that to somebody, an adult, a teacher, a parent, someone with temporary custody of that child, and comes to you and say, this person has interfered with me or do me, because sometimes a child may not actually say sex.
What the act is.
Yeah,
yes.
They might use words like do me or touch me or, and you have to, talk to the child and say, in a very warm and nice environment. So tell me what you mean, like what did the person do? And when that child says that to you, it is not for you to take that information and say to the neighbor or to tell all the other relatives of that child what happened. That information is for you to take and bring directly to the police, because that is a criminal offense, and not just any offense. It's a high court matter. It's a very, very serious offense.
Can you tell somebody about the incident for them to report, or because you were the first person that the child told, you have a right to go to the police station?
You have a right. The law is strict, very strict. Sexual Offences Act 1128, and it incorporated in the Children's Act 4601, number 12 of 2012, right? And it says that you are mandated, you are obligated. If you fail to do it, you could be charged. Any person, and I can read out part of it, but any person who has responsibility of a child, anybody who's a parent or guardian, any teacher, any social worker, any doctor, any medical practitioner, anybody. So it covers not just, if you take, for example, somebody might say, well, I suspect my child is sexually active, and will take their child privately to the hospital.
Right, yeah.
Or privately to a doctor, a private doctor, and that doctor, in examining that child, observed that some kind of sexual penetration took place. That doctor would instruct the parent to, and the doctor would also call the police and report it. So even if the parent doesn't, we will have the report, and that report will go directly to Child Protection Unit.
Yes.
So because that doctor could lose his license, his or her license.
Of course. And if you fail to, if a child comes to you with a very serious report and you fail to report that, what are some of the charges?
So where a person failed to make the report, the charge is 7 years imprisonment and $15,000, or 7 years and $15,000. So you can be charged depending on the severity of the matter. The magistrate or judge can determine whether it will be just the 7 years or the $15,000 or both. Yeah. Or both. Yeah. So you have people in this land, whether you're a citizen or not, because we have, as in any other part of the world, So we have persons who are born here and persons who are here for whatever reason. So when a child makes a report to you, especially a minor, and that level of trust has been given to you, you have an obligation to come to the police and make a report. Whether the child is telling a truth or a lie is not for you to determine. You're not the investigator. You are just supposed to come with that child and make the report. And it's important that that child, feels that you have their best interest at heart, and that you do not take that information and take it to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, because the child also has to live. Yeah. And when that information goes out there, and then the child becomes shut in, and the child would have said it so much time that the child, when the police now go to talk to the child, that child no longer wants to talk.
Yeah, they might become closed up and isolated.
So we have to wait now for some intervention to take place before we record a correct, proper, thorough statement, because the child, we are guided by the emotions and the trauma and all of that. So it's just as soon as the child says it to you, just come.
Inspector, are there other offences where it is mandated that you have to make a report?
It is, even with under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act Chapter 4850, Section 79(1). It also speaks about the responsibility of you to assist the driver, make a report, render aid, insofar as taking the person to the hospital.
Is this whether you were involved in the accident or not?
If you were involved in the accident.
If you were involved in the accident, okay.
But of course, if you are there as someone I decided to do, certainly you have an obligation as well to assist. You see, a lot of the things that we see happening in Trinidad and Tobago, persons have the opinion that if it does not concern me directly, I am just going to take a standoff approach, and so crime continues to rise in the country. Persons are looking on and nobody really helping. But crime really is everybody's business. It is more than just if you see something, say something. It is also about you actively getting involved. In some cases, it can be anonymously, because, for example, in cases of firearm, perhaps you saw someone place a firearm somewhere, and you would call 555 or a 999 and indicated you observe a firearm, lodged in a particular place, or set down at a particular place, look under the tree, whatever is the case, and you may give that anonymously, right? Because we know in cases of firearm, if you are in possession of the firearm without a firearm user's license, that's an offense.
Yes, it is.
So you can call anonymously and say that, you notice that there's a, whatever type of firearm or ammunition, and let the police come in and shoot it in.
So the two incidents that you mentioned in terms of the sexual offense and the accident,
yes,
you are mandated to go physically, because, for example, there might be a hit-and-run driver. He drives off, his conscience bothers him, and of course I'm just saying he to generalize. I'm not harping on one gender, but he had the accident. It was a hit and run, and he said, you know what, my conscience is beating me, let me call the police station. Can he make an anonymous report, or must he go in and make the report?
He must.
I wanted to be clear, because we have so many hit and run drivers right now.
Let me read a portion of it, right? So section 48, Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, Chapter 4850, Section 79(1), it says, where, owing to the presence of the vehicle on a road, an accident occurs whereby injury or damage is caused to any person, animal, or property, the driver of such vehicle shall immediately stop, and 1, if any person has been injured in the accident, the driver shall render such person aid, and if the person wishes to be taken to the hospital or to a doctor, or is unconscious, convey or cause to be conveyed the injured person without delay to the nearest hospital or doctor. 2, if requested by the injured person or by the owner of the damaged property or some person on such person's behalf, the driver shall give his name and address and particulars of his driver's permit and the name and address of the owner of the vehicle, because sometimes somebody driving a vehicle doesn't belong to you.
Yep.
But you're driving the vehicle. So it is strict in the law, and unless a report is made by the driver at the time and place of the accident, the member of the police service, meaning sometimes we have officers outside,
on the road, yeah.
The person riding or driving or in charge of the vehicles shall proceed with all proper dispatch to the nearest police station or police constable in uniform, and shall report the accident, and shall give his name and address, and the name and address of the owner of the vehicle as well, and the name and address of any other person at the time.
No,
was involved
failure
in
to
the
do this,
accident.
Inspector.
Failure to do that, any person who contravenes this act is, unless otherwise specifically provided, liable to a fine of $3,000 or to imprisonment to 6 months. Right? So, and if it is a hit and run, then that's another aspect. Right? Because you didn't do anything.
At that point, immediately, as the law says.
Yeah, you didn't do anything at that point.
Now, Inspector, we're almost out of time, but are there any other offenses that you must go, that you are mandated to go to the police station to report?
Let me, in relation to the sexual offense, let me just read a portion of it as well, because it is also wide.
Yeah.
So it
we have about a minute again, but go ahead. Go quickly.
Person who is a parent or guardian of a minor, or has actual custody, charge, or control of a minor, has temporary care, charge, or control of a minor for a specific purpose, like an outing or something like that, or an attendant, or an employee, or a teacher, or any other person in any capacity. Medical, doctor, nurse, anybody like that, and any person who, without reasonable cause, fails to comply with the requirement of that section is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $15,000 or to imprisonment to a term of 7 years or to both such fine and imprisonment. So in this case, in these two cases, you know, it is mandatory. And it have some other parts of the act, which I don't have on me, that are also mandatory.
Right.
And of course, where it is not mandatory, you have an obligation as somebody living in Trinidad and Tobago to do your part and be a responsible person and report the matter to the police. And so we will come in and do our part. And so we can see that reduction in crime that we all want. It's not just a police thing.
It's for all of us.
We all want it. We want to enjoy Carnival.
Of course. No, let me thank you so much for coming in. I know we're out of time. The time always flies when you come in here, but let me thank you so much for coming in and just sharing about that mandatory law that we have in terms of going to physically to the police stations to report those crimes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, as always, Kimberly, to be here. Of course, if you see something, dial 999-555-800 tips. God bless you. Have a good day.
Have a good one. And that was Inspector Michelle Lewis just sharing about those mandatory laws. Remember, if you see something, say something. At the Now Morning Show, we're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.